Welcome, everyone, to Visa Fintech Perspectives. My name is Terry Angelos. I focus on fintech and crypto at Visa. And this is a series where we get to engage with some of our most interesting and innovative clients. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Venkatesh Saha from Wise.
Hi, Terry. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I thought I'd just start off with, what is your role at Wise? And in fact, when we first started engaging with you and Wise, it was still TransferWise, and you were focused on sort of helping the company bring card solutions to the platform. But what is your current role?
So I do a few different things. I've spent most of my time on bringing Wise, or formerly TransferWise, to Asia Pacific. We're licensed in about 12 geographies around the world, and roughly half of them are actually here in Asia Pacific. That means bringing the entire product suite, which is our multi-currency account, our card product, and our remittance service to as many consumers here in Asia Pacific as possible. The second role that I've done, perhaps in more in the last 2 years, has been thinking about how can we take our card program global? How can we do it more efficiently? So our card program is now live in 40 markets around the world, and we're very excited to be working closely with Visa as we continue to bring it to even more markets internationally.
So Venkatesh, why don't we dive into just unpacking what are the components of the Wise business? You guys have over 10 million customers. You touch consumers, businesses, and you're involved as a platform for many other banks and neobanks. So maybe you can help us unpack all of those businesses for us.
That's right, Terry. We celebrated 10 years earlier this year, and that also coincided with 10 million customers. So it was a really nice milestone for us. In those 10 years, we've evolved into the three things that you mentioned. So there is Wise, which is predominantly the consumer business. There is Wise Business, and then there is Wise Platform. So let me spend a moment talking about each of them. Wise, as the consumer business, which you're probably most familiar with and might even be a user of, is the multi-currency account, which lets you hold 40-something currencies in the account, convert from one to another at some of the cheapest exchange rates in the world, and a bunch of other features. Linked to that is a multi-currency debit card that we issue with Visa in many markets around the world. And what that lets you do is it truly lets you spend like a local with some of the best foreign exchange rates, no additional fees or any other markups. And then there is the remittance service, which depending on where you live, you could send money to up to 80 countries around the world at some of the cheapest exchange rates, very transparent fees, and almost instantly in many cases. So we're extremely proud that today, 38% of our transactions around the world are completed in 20 seconds or less. We offer many of these features and more to our business customers under Wise Business. So you could be a small and medium-sized business. You might have, let's say, engineers in 5 different markets. You can upload a salary statement to us every month. We can take care of it. We do batch payments. We're integrated with various bookkeeping software like Xero, so you can keep track of all your foreign exchange transactions coming in and going out. And we believe that this is a true international account for small and medium-sized businesses. Finally, Terry, there is Wise Platform, which is where we're opening our infrastructure to large organizations. So on the one hand, these large organizations could be banks. And a great example of that is what we do with Monzo in the UK today, which is the largest digital bank there. If you're a Monzo customer and you want to make an international remittance, you just click on the remittance button within the native Monzo app. It takes you to a powered by TransferWise experience, or a powered by Wise Now experience, where you would get the same pricing and the same service as you would if you came to Wise directly. And on the non-bank side, a really good example would be our integration with Google Pay in the US, where as a Google Pay consumer, you can now, through Google Pay, use Wise's infrastructure to send money to countries like India.
And I think I read that you guys are moving on the order of £5 billion a month cross-border, but also that today, something like 98% of all international money movement is through the correspondent banking system. So it sounds like you have a large runway on which to grow. And curious where you see some of the growth coming from, your consumer side, the business side, or the platform side.
Our heritage has been as a consumer business, and I think that's where we have the longest legacy. But more recently, as we've begun to invest more in building out the platform as well as Wise Business, we're seeing a lot of great traction there. So last year alone, we had something like 150,000 businesses sign up to Wise and start to use many of the features. And we continue to see the same kind of traction this year and going into the future as well.
So maybe we can dive a little bit into your background, Venkatesh. How did you first get involved in payments and fintech in this crazy world of card issuance?
So I like to think my career primarily in two bits. There's the bit before Wise and before fintech, and then there's been my time at Wise. I went to school in the US. I attended the University of Pennsylvania, both as an undergraduate student, but also went back to working for my MBA many years later. But I've focused my career primarily on emerging markets. So I started out doing investment banking in India. I was a management consultant at Bain & Company then for a few years. And then I went to work in government. So I used to work for an organization that was founded by the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. And I was then seconded to two governments. The first was Rwanda, where I worked in the Ministry of Finance, and the second was in Vietnam, where I focused on topics primarily around economic reform. I then spent some time trying to think about startup ideas, worked as an independent consultant, and I actually got paid once using Wise, and this is in the early days of Wise. But I found that experience so seamless, and this was me, a skeptic. I'm like, what? You're not paying me through correspondent banking? You're not using Swift? You're going to use this thing called Wise? That's when I actually started looking into the company a little bit more. And during my research, I found out that they were looking to open an office here in Singapore and get more serious about Asia. So I got in touch with the company, and here I've been 4 years later.
That's an incredible story. I know that something like 2/3 of your customers are through referrals. I didn't realize that it also is a way to attract future leaders in the company, is just use the product.
It is. And so I think what's been personally exciting for me as well is when I was living in India back then, you couldn't use Wise. And we just launched in India finally a few weeks ago. So if you now live in India and you want to send money internationally, 40-something countries, we're here for you. But another fun fact for you, and I think what also got me interested in payments is during my time in business school, I actually interned at Visa in South Africa, which is your home country.
Great. So why don't we chat a little bit about some of the ways we've been working, with Wise. I think we met back in 2018 when Wise was thinking of adding, cards on a global basis. And you're an incredibly unique client for Visa in that Wise is inherently a global service, but also operating in multiple jurisdictions. And why don't you just walk through some of the challenges you were having in implementing a card solution across all of the geographies that you operate in, but also doing so in a global cloud-based way?
Let's take a step back of how the card product actually came about. So we started with the remittance piece, or send money as we call it internally. We then added the multi-currency account. But then customers came to us and started saying, hey, we would also love to spend that money, whether it's getting a coffee or if I'm a small business buying a printer online or doing other transactions that need foreign exchange. So in order for us to be able to issue a card product, we need a few different things to happen. The first is we obviously need the regulatory permissions. The second piece is the part where we work with organizations like Visa in order to enable it to join Visa's network, if you will. Generally, there are two challenges for companies that want to do it internationally. The first is sort of a technical or an infrastructure challenge. And then the second is what I would broadly bucket as a commercial one. If I want to bring a card product into a new market around the world, once I have the regulatory permissions, I first need to go and talk to Visa. I need to get a commercial deal going in that market. Then I need to find a way to connect to Visa's extremely secure network. So that typically means finding a processor that's certified in that market, doing an integration with that processor, doing a whole bunch of testing. Maybe we have an existing processor, but they're not certified in the market. And the list goes on and on. And then there is the working with the local Visa country teams to make sure that we've done everything from a regulatory and compliance perspective before we can launch the program. All of this for what is essentially the same product that we want to bring in every market around the world. So it used to take us anywhere between 6 to 9 months after getting a regulatory permission to bring this to market. And that's not a good way to be able to create the customer delight that we as a fast-growing company want to do. So we came to Visa and specifically to you, Terry, and basically said, well, surely there must be a better way to do this. And I'm super excited to see all of the good work that we've done together. So today, we are participants in Visa Cloud Connect. In fact, we think that we co-created this with you and then eventually became the first fintech to be actually using it, where we can now connect to you directly through a single global integration, a single global certification, which means we don't need the middleman processor anymore in any new market that we go into.
So Venkatesh, we're incredibly excited to work with you and the WISE team to develop Visa Cloud Connect, which is a way for issuers such as yourself to connect to Visa through the public cloud while maintaining all of the security that we have in place. We have something like 10 million route miles of leased lines flowing into Visa data centers. So first of all, thank you for helping us develop that solution. And I'd love to just get a sense for how is that working today and how are you using the platform?
Likewise, Terry, I think if you were to ask the engineers in our Spend and Cards team what their proudest achievement has been, it's all about Cloud Connect and working with the Visa family. Building it is one thing though, but seeing it in action is another. So with Cloud Connect, we were able to issue Visa cards in rapid succession in pretty diverse countries: Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Europe, and there's a whole list that's waiting now. And then we know that Cloud Connect has helped us bring down this time to market by a lot of time.
By the way, I still remember like the very intro discussions on what is an authorization message and what is a response, and it was fun to see the engineering team just digest all of that and turn that into a global issuing platform, which is hard to do.
Yeah, I think what was more fun for our engineers was your colleague that you discovered somewhere in Denver, who I think knows everything about the Visa network, and you flew him down to Singapore, and then the engineers didn't want to talk to the rest of us. They only wanted to really hang out with him for the evening. So
this is true. Actually, one of the great joys and privileges of working with Visa is finding unbelievable experts. This particular individual has been at Visa over 20 years, actually retired and came back and just knew everything about how to process a transaction at Visa. And we knew we needed his expertise. We sort of discovered him late in the process and convinced him to fly to Singapore, I think on a couple of days' notice. And I'm thrilled that he made it because he clearly had all 20 years of experience in that room, and it was the right call. This is a tough question for somebody in the payment business, but what is your favorite payment experience that isn't WISE?
If you ask me honestly, it's getting the basics right. So contactless has taken a while to come to Asia Pacific, and it's in different stages of evolution depending on which market you go to. But today, even for me in Singapore, I love the fact now that I can enable my WISE card on Apple Pay. When I take public transport, whether it's the bus or the subway, I can just tap my phone and be able to use it seamlessly. And that's what payments is all about. It's about building that infrastructure so everything works well in the background. It makes it more convenient.
Yeah, I think once cards are tokenized and sitting on more convenient devices like your phone or your watch, or just being able to tap it becomes a fairly magical experience. Venkatesh, what advice would you have for a new fintech founder who is looking to start, his or her company, and having gone through this, 10-year journey, 4 years at Wise for you, how would you advise that individual?
So as someone who's not a founder, but more of what I would think an intrapreneur, as an entrepreneur within a fast-growing company, I think think of a problem that's truly global, and try to solve it at scale. So for us at Wise, when Christo and David, our founders, started, it was first about solving a problem that they had. Every time they send money between Europe and the UK or back, they were always losing a lot of money. It was too slow, and they never actually knew how much they were getting on the other side. So they figured out that surely this was not just a problem for them, but it was a problem for millions of other people. And that's been the genesis of us from the day one, is to go international and to really bring the Wise proposition to millions of people around the world. And when you solve a global problem, you come across global challenges. And the real excitement comes from solving those global challenges and making life simpler and more convenient for our consumers.
Always a pleasure to see you, Venkatesh, and we'll look forward to additional launches on the Wise platform.